If we could get started. Most of you will recognize that I'm not John Sondag, who's your president. John's on business. Oh, you're good. I'll pass that along. Johnny works 3 doors down. Anyway, I'm pinch hitting for him tonight. And as customary, are there any new alumni board members here tonight? Anybody? You have to raise your hand if you are. Can you stand up and identify yourself? All right. Okay. Yes, sir. One more. All right. Anybody else? Oh, one more. Great. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Glad to have you with us. Okay. Hopefully I'm not going to screw this up. We're going to talk first about Cash Bar, which is coming up Saturday, April 8th. And that's really a perfect date this year. It's after the NCAA tournament. There's no Cardinals game that night. The Blues are out of town. So it's a perfect day for the auction. And the theme of this year's Cash Bar is Oakland Downs. It must be really tough to keep coming up with new themes for Cash Bar, but it's Oakland Downs, the 48th running of Cash Bar. It's obviously Kentucky Derby theme. And mint juleps apparently will be the featured cocktail at that. There are some great items. That's not so tough. John told me this is going to be really hard. Great items up for bid. The premier item is a Kentucky Derby experience for 4 people. Package including a private plane ride down to Louisville for the Derby and back on the same day, box seats at the Churchill Downs, and access to the owners and trainers hospitality area for food and beverages. And other items include the use of vacation homes in the Turks and Caicos Islands, Mexico, Florida, Gulf Coast of Alabama, Palm Desert, and more. Also for bid are some unique dinners and parties, as well as lots of premium sports tickets and sports memorabilia. And as most of you know, this Cash Bar is a major fundraising event for the school. It's also a great fun night to reconnect with friends and fellow alumni. And so we all hope you can attend. Invitations are being mailed this week, Joe? Okay, going out this week, and typically sells out or gets, yeah, so I would, get your reservation in early. Okay, that's Cash Bar. February Frenzy. Mr. Piniella is going to talk to us about February Frenzy, which I just learned about. John?
Thanks, Tony. Just real quick, this is our 3rd annual February Frenzy, which is a giving campaign for the classes of 90 through 2010 for young alumni. I know the guys from 90 like me to call them the young alumni. So it's been a really great 3 days. We started on Tuesday. We end tonight at midnight. I want to make sure I thank Mark Burns and Jeff Rombach and Bob Wacker and Tim Wells, Cliff Reynolds and Will Hartzler for their help with me in getting this week kind of organized and giving me some good ideas for what will work. Before I came down here at about 5:20, we had 500 gifts, exactly 500 gifts actually, since Monday at midnight. Sorry, Tuesday at midnight. And that represents over $35,000 in gifts. So it's been a tremendous success kind of by any measure. 200 alumni have made their first gift this year. And that includes 18 alums who've made their first gift ever. Sorry about that. Yeah, thank you. So that continues through midnight tonight. I want to thank all the class reps who are here tonight, who've helped kind of push their classes to donate and send text messages and done stuff on social media or sent emails. Like I said, it's been a big success, and it's still going. So we're going to be well over 500 gifts. I know a couple of classes are sending some text messages and making calls tonight. So thanks for your support, you guys from 90 and through 2010. And we're trying to be more like you guys who are a little bit older than 1990. Thanks so much.
We also have a February frenzy at my house, but it involves money going out the door and not coming in. So, next is our guest speaker for the night, Dan Meehan, from the class of 1982. Dan's president and CEO of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and he leads Missouri's advocacy group for job growth and economic expansion. Dan's going to talk to us about the Chamber's 15-year strategic plan to improve Missouri's workforce preparation, economic competitiveness, job-supporting infrastructure, and business leadership. Dan also serves on the board, several boards and commissions aimed at bringing economic growth to Missouri, including the Midwest Hub Commission, which I'm not sure what that is, and Missouri Hawthorne Foundation. Prior to joining the Missouri Chamber, Dan worked for Wash U in St. Louis, and he has also been involved in several statewide and regional campaigns, and he was a staff assistant to former U.S. Senator Chris Kit Bond. Dan has a BA in economics from the University of Pennsylvania, and he lives in Jefferson City with his wife, Ellen, and their 2 daughters. Please join me in welcoming Dan Meehan.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tony. Appreciate it. And to start off, I'm overwhelmed to be back here. Class 82 and the footprint back then, as you all know, you younger guys might not know this, was just small, so small compared to what it is today. And the place just looks great and shows beautifully. So congratulations on that. There's so many stories to be told. I ran into Tony in the parking lot, and I was looking at the field where our football team was the first team to play on that field. And then I was looking at the grass out here, and I remember a mud bowl game against McClure North or McClure. We won, but the funny thing afterwards, we all just were sliding around in the mud out there, just running and sliding and in the puddles and mud. It was a blast. But the memories come back very vividly. And one guy from 82, Glenn Kemper, it's great to see you again. So, and to see so many people here, I know I have a cousin here. There's another one expected. And when they started pinging me about, so you're coming to speak, and I said, please keep the insults and the projectiles at a minimum. So please abide by that. But what I thought I'd do tonight, real briefly, is talk about the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and what we do, and then talk about our strategic plan, and then a little bit about our brand new governor. And like the bio says, I was working at Washington University when I ran into a friend of a friend who had this idea of, you know, you're kind of interested in this stuff. I'm on the board of the Missouri Chamber, and we've had an opening for a while for Vice President of Government Affairs. And I said, what is that? I was getting married 6 weeks later, and as the story goes, 4 weeks before my wedding, I accepted a new job on September 14th, got married October 14th, moved to Jeff City and started October 30th, moved my wife down in a snowstorm in December. And I thought, well, this is on a lark. We decided, Ellen and I, at the old Steak and Shake across from the Galleria, which is no longer, why don't we try this and see where it goes? And thinking 3-4 years, whatever, we'll see how it goes. And it looks like I'm in for life. So been at the chamber since then. 3 years after I started, the president retired, and I was chosen to lead the organization. So for the last 19 years, that's what I've been doing. A little bit about what the Missouri Chamber is and isn't. We're not your local chamber of commerce. We're a statewide organization. We've got about 3,000 members, ranging from the ones you know about, hear about, Anheuser-Busch, Boeing, Hallmark, to a two-man hearing aid shop in Monette, Missouri. I can tell you it's a big state. We don't have a plane. We drive it. So to get around, it's kind of interesting. And the things you learn, the diversity of the state is incredible. From the ag products that we produce, from the industry, from the high tech to the low tech, we've got it all in Missouri. So your local chamber takes care of Main Street and retail to retail. And they try to do the after-hour business card exchange, these types of things. The parade, the 4th of July show, that's not us. We are the business lobby. So we are lobbyists. We lobby on anything that impacts the employer community and the business climate. So whether it's tax policy, regulatory, climate, infrastructure, tort reform, whatever it might be. To do that, we employ about 25 people, 4 full-time lobbyists. I'm also a registered lobbyist, and I like to do the disclaimer early on that whatever you think about lobbyists hanging out in a smoke-filled room, passing money under the table, dispel that notion. A lobbyist is a person that you hire to protect you from the people that you elect. So I want to get that out on the table. We are in the middle of the legislative session in Missouri, and I want to talk about that just a touch, and then talk about the Jefferson City dynamic. The legislative session in Missouri goes from the first week of January to the second week of May, and 4.5 months, and it kind of crescendos in intensity as it goes through the process. In 21 legislative sessions that I've had, I've never seen it this intense, with this much activity and energy this early, and it's because of a new governor and the current legislative leadership. Just be honest about this. We're all alumni, and and others. I saw at least one Jesuit in the room, so you can't lie. Do you know who your state rep is? Raise your hand. Look around the room and look how many people have their hands up. This is the dynamic in Jeff City. It's the dynamic in Missouri. You're laughing about it, and you're new here, so be careful. If I was in Sedalia, Missouri, that number would be almost 90% of the people probably raising their hands. St. Louis and Kansas City to just a little bit of a lesser extent, but St. Louis has always been the most western, eastern looking city. Kansas City, the most eastern, western looking city. They're two different dynamics, two different cultures, and they do not focus on what makes their state tick. Jefferson City has 42,000 people in it. It is the 6th smallest state capital in the country. It does not get the attention that Atlanta, Indianapolis, St. Paul, Austin, even Springfield or Topeka get. So what I like to say is the news trucks show up at the beginning of session, end of session, and if there's a scandal. In the last couple of years, they've been there a little more than usual. But at any rate, people don't focus on what goes on in state government. You heard today already about immigration issues at the federal level, a potential tax bill that might go through. You did not hear that an unemployment insurance bill got finally passed out of the Missouri House. It's going to the Senate. You did. It was on KMOX. I heard it midday. But it's rare and what they said on KMOX was kind of what happened, but it doesn't get the attention that it deserves. But if you're in business or you're just a taxpayer or a citizen in the state of Missouri, what these people do impacts you as an individual, you as a family, and you as a business. So that's been one of the biggest challenges for us, is to get out and tell the story about what goes on in Jefferson City. And we've got some dandy stories. But what they do impacts your daily life, and it's a story that doesn't get told. It's one thing that we're trying to change. How do we derive what we work on? We have about, like I said, 3,000 members across the state. We reach out to those members. We establish legislative policy councils to try to find out what's making them tick, what their challenges are, what's working well, what we need to address legislatively, what we can feasibly address legislatively. So It's a membership-driven organization, which is the lifeblood of what we do. One of the things that we noticed just a few years back, would take you back to 2008, the economy craters. We had the doomsday scenario. What happens if a member, Hellebusch Tool and Die in Washington, Missouri, says, Dan, I got to cut a shift. My orders aren't coming in. I can't afford dues this year, which aren't that expensive. But what happens if that happens across the board? We have to prepare for that scenario. We did. And we had some cuts, but it didn't hurt us that as badly as we thought. Then we started growing the organization again to the point where the board said, we need to do something with the resources that we're bringing in. We need to invest it back into the state, figure out what we can do to make the state better. So we embarked on what we call Missouri 2030, which is not that, but it's this. What we saw was there was a lack of direction. There was a lack of what's going to happen for our kids, for Cecilia and Katie, my 18 and 14-year-old daughters. Are we going to have the economy, the opportunities that keeps them here or gives them something to want to be in Missouri? And are we going to be able to attract those people and keep them here? Because what we knew was that the demographics of 25 to 44-year-olds, we're losing more as a state than we're gaining or retaining. And that's a real problem. That's your future workforce, that's your purchasing power, those are your congressional districts. So we said, the board said, what can we do to try to change these things? And I had seen a couple other states do a Blueprint Kentucky or a Vision Indiana, kind of a look into the future. We called it Missouri 2030. We brought in my counterpart from North Carolina Chamber of Commerce. And one of the people that he was using to lead North Carolina in this effort, his name is Ted Abernathy. He ran the Research Triangle in North Carolina. He's got an economic development international consulting company. His company has access to hundreds of different metrics to compare how you're doing as Missouri with the other 49 states. I'm not going to kill you with the data. I could, but I'm just going to hit you with a couple data points. And this kind of, what we wanted to do is take where Missouri stood out of the political arena and do an honest assessment and a deep dive into where we were. So we wanted to compare and put out there, how do we stand? And here's what we found out. This is 04 to 14 data. We haven't changed the slides yet, but we're doing that next. From 04 to 14, according to the U.S. Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics, that's how much our job growth was in that time frame, 2.5%. We ranked 42nd out of 50 states. In the same time period, our state GDP was the 43rd out of 50. We're in the lower echelon. Slide I don't have up there is per capita income growth. We were 37th in that same time period. And the board looked at that and said, you know, we always thought we were mid-range or something, but is it really that bad? And yeah, it's really that bad. This U.S. Department of Labor data, we didn't mine this in our basement. We went to the source. So we said, okay, something's got to give. The other thing we did for Missouri 2030 was to contract with the Gallup organization to do a one-on-one interview with a minimum of 1,000 CEOs across the state of Missouri. They ended up with 1,050. We wanted them to do 20 what I call exit interviews. In other words, Conroy Incorporated decides to locate their next facility in Tennessee or Minnesota or wherever. Why did you not pick Missouri, or why did you leave Missouri? I think that would have been very interesting, but Conroy Incorporated was too busy making their widget and doing their thing, and it's like, I don't want to bog down with this. We couldn't get that done, but they interviewed 20 site selectors, the people that you contract with to find the best place to locate. And the other side of that coin is to eliminate the other states where not to locate. We were getting eliminated way often than picked. I'm not going to kill you with that data tonight, but the point is we invested a lot of treasure and time to make sure that this plan was data-driven, fact-based, and outside of the political arena. So the data is very compelling. We've got our challenges. We've got our strengths. There's good things here too. But we try to mine this and create a plan to say, here's where we stand. Here's what we found from the business community as to what their challenges, strengths, weaknesses are. And we took it to the legislature and still are. But a lot of times if I'm talking to a group like this, I'll ask, raise your hand if you think Washington, D.C. is going to solve your problems. People laugh. And it's still that way. It doesn't matter who's in power. But whether it's Harvard Business School or Forbes or the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, they all know that the states that get it right, the states that take action and impact their own economy are going to flourish. The states that don't won't. The data shows that we're not. So it's not a DC thing. It's about what you're doing in your state. And I wish I had a dime for every time my team or I hear this in the Hallett Halls in Jeff City. We always have to do a gun bill. There's always going to be a pro-life bill. There's always going to be checking the political boxes to get them reelected. But some of the things that they've come up with, see if these impact your state GDP, personal income growth, or job growth. Outlawing ISIS, again, 2 years in a row. Establishing the jumping jack as the official exercise of the state of Missouri. I'm not making this up. These are some of the things they do just to make sure that they can secure their reelection sometimes. So sorry, your issue doesn't poll well. The issue we passed today in the House impacts how much you as an employer will pay in state unemployment tax, SUTA. And it'll help on your bottom line. And it'll help us be able to finance the next time we go into a recession, how we pay the loan back that we'll have to take from the federal government to pay those unemployment insurance claims. I get it, that isn't sexy, but this is what we do to try to make sure that we are as competitive as possible. So you gotta look at Jefferson City and say, who's running the show? And you've got a situation where there's a lot of good people there. These people get maligned because they're in the spotlight. But they're all, I don't care, Republican, Democrat, almost all of them are down there trying to make a positive difference in things. But they are term limited. In the House, you can serve 4 2-year terms and you're done. Senate, 2 4-year terms and you're done. Governor Nixon was just termed out. We had an election. He's done. They're looking for their next gig. Even when they get elected to the House, they're looking at that Senate district and saying, all right, who else is running? So term limits enacted by the voters, which will not be changed. The public opinion on it is incredibly high. They cause a problem because you've got a $27 billion corporation called the state of Missouri, and you've got a board of directors that is just a revolving door. There's no continuity. Hence, we wanted to do 2030. And when we created this little Barnum and Bailey show, we're taking it out to employers around the state, chambers of commerce, all the other trade associations. We're saying, who's in charge? You are. And when we crafted this, we just had a speaker deposed from office, a senator had to resign for sexting, things like that going on, and people were pulling their hair out. So we call this the adults got to come in the room and sort things out. Anyway, that's what we're doing with Missouri 2030 to try to have a long-term outlook on what we need to do. We didn't get into this overnight. We're not going to get out of it overnight. And I mentioned, St. Louis and Kansas City, that dynamic about a lack of focus on Jefferson City. But if St. Louis and Kansas City don't have a focus on what's going on in their state, but people like you in the room are saying, but our transportation system sucks, or our education system is not performing where we need to. Take this home. Over 35% of the kids going to the University of Missouri next fall are going to need remedial math and remedial reading. 35%. If you go to community college, those numbers go up to about 55%. So is that working? Could any business run on those levels of success? And then those kids that go to either the university or the community college are so much more apt to not make it through. And then what have we just done? We've wasted a ton of money and gotten really nowhere with that. So these are the kinds of hard data issues that we have to face and have to face as a state. because whether you like it or not, that little sleepy river town, 42,000 people in mid-Missouri, is where this stuff happens, in the legislature, in the administration, et cetera, and so forth. So what we learned from Gallup was there were 4 what we call drivers that we need to focus on. Some of this is obvious, but when it's St. Louis and Kansas City that aren't focused on what's going on, that's 70% of your population and 70% of your economic activity right there. If you don't get those 2 communities to focus, I'd get crucified if I was out in mid-Missouri. But if you don't get Kansas City and St. Louis to focus on this, it won't work. And they can't just focus on their silo. They've got to address it as a state. So uniting the business community is probably the most important thing. If we could do that behind this data-driven plan and convince people like the legislature, legislative leadership, we've had success doing this, to look at the data and address it, we got a better chance of succeeding. And I don't know how many times I've been told on the second bullet item up here, Dan, I've got the jobs, I can't find the people with the skills. Or I hired some people and they didn't show up next week. Or they didn't pass the drug test. I can fix some of these things. There's some societal problems out there that are going to be there, but the workforce issue is key. And someone told me last week at Rankin Tech, Dan, it's not a jobs issue. All the politicians want to talk about job growth. We've got to grow the skills to match the jobs that are out there because we can't meet them right now. And that's extremely true. So workforce development, that starts even before K through 12, but with the education numbers I threw at you a couple of minutes ago, education is not working the way it needs to. So we've got to address the whole time span of education, workforce preparedness, and we got to realize, even though here we are at St. Louis University High School, that by 2022, only 25% of the jobs out there are going to require a 4-year degree. That's reality. So the community college system and the overall K through 12 system is they need to ramp up, and we need to make that better. Competing for jobs. Are we good on taxes, good on regulatory environment, good on other competitive issues? Right to work comes up. I know that probably splits this crowd up, but right to work came up in the data. And the fact is, the right to work states that have been right to work from 05 to 15 have seen job growth. 15+%, non-right to work states, 11.7%. The wage growth in those 2 categories of states, 7.7% in the same 10-year period. In right to work states, 7.7% in non-right to work states. Those are the numbers. It matters. So making us as competitive as possible is important. Infrastructure we have listed 4th. We've got the 2nd and 3rd largest rail hubs in the continent, Kansas City and St. Louis in that order. We've got the 7th longest highway system. We are in the middle of the country. Nobody's going to take that away. In our view, we should be the logistics and distribution center for not just the Midwest, for the entire country and the continent, especially with the new canal opening. The north-south traffic's increasing. We need to be ready for it. This infrastructure, even with this legislature who's moving as quickly on our agenda as I've ever seen, they don't want to touch the transportation issue right now. They see it as a tax increase. For them, that's radioactive. I think we get it next year or maybe the following year because the federal government seems like they're going to be doing something on it. And if you think the federal government is going to invest money in a state that doesn't match up, you're crazy. We've got to match up and attract that investment. Those 4 areas are where we're focusing, and we know that that could make a difference. So we're trying to be real about this. We're 42nd in job growth from 04 to 14th. We're not saying we're going to go and be top 5, top 10. But if we moved from 42nd in job growth to 30th, these are the real numbers. 27,000 new jobs a year. 1.15 billion in new payroll, and the spinoff from that throughout the economy is a game changer. So if we just change the trajectory a little bit, it makes a big, big difference. So just a little bit about the companies that are helping us out with this. This doesn't come cheap. Gallup was 600,000 and we're blowing through money, but we're raising 5 million to cover everything and deploy things into the field. These are some of our big supporters here, and we really appreciate their help with 2030. That's Missouri 2030, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and your comments on it. But you all know, and I should say there's a little more in-depth description at your table. Feel free to take that home and read it thoroughly, as Father Hagen used to say. But just a little bit about this new guy, Eric Greitens. As Tony told you, I worked for Kip Bond, and I've been involved in political campaigns. I've been 21 years dealing with these guys in Jeff City, and I kind of know the politics of the state. About 3 years ago, almost to the day, I was at a U.S. Chamber meeting called the Committee of 100 down in Orlando. And they have program, you fly in on a Sunday, they have program, then you have reception, dinner, and keynote speaker from a Navy SEAL. Okay, Navy SEAL, that's cool. And got a copy of his book at everybody's seat. And it's about double the size of this room. And it was The Heart and the Fist by Eric Greitens. And this former Navy SEAL, Eric Greitens, gets up and does his, what I now call Greitens 101. And he talks about joining the Navy SEALs, and he has video and other testimony as to what they went through in Navy SEAL training. 222 guys went in, or 222 went in, 22 made it out of the program. That's the attrition rate. And it was very compelling about what these men had to go through. Then he talked about being in Fallujah, and he showed a picture of where the suicide bomb went off in front of a building where they were billeted that night, and how they lost a couple people, and a couple people got hurt. Eric got hurt, but not that badly. Then he talked about coming back to the States and starting the Mission Continues, when he would go see people in hospitals, other vets that had been maimed and badly hurt. And they all wanted to contribute something back, get back to their mission. And he talked about the Mission Continues. And I have not met this guy. I don't know anything about him but for this. And we've all been to thousands of dinners like this where sometimes the speaker's good, sometimes they're not. This guy was on fire. Then he shows the Mission Continues volunteers ringing Wrigley Field. And I'm like, done, he's a Cub fan. But a couple minutes later, he's wrapping up and he says, as a kid growing up in St. Louis, and I'm, what? So he's a St. Louis guy. Okay. And I've got a copy of the Mission Continues, and I'm going to have him sign it. And after the dinner, people are breaking up. He's getting mobbed to have people sign it. And the president of the U.S. Chamber and their senior VP, Rob Engstrom, who's a good friend of mine, find me individually and say, you got to meet this guy. He wants to run statewide in Missouri. Been talking to you up at the head table. Okay. I meet him, and he's getting mobbed. I said, we'll get together back home. I go to lunch at his house in the Central West End and meet his wife, sit down with him, and we start talking about things. And I, like a lot of other people that have been in this racket, said, you know what, you're kind of jumping into the deep end here. Your first election ever running for governor of any state, but yeah, there's plenty of places down ticket for you, or yeah, but I just want to make a difference. Okay. Point is, I went into his house at 12, left at 4:30. Missouri 2030 was stapled together, dog-eared, handwritten stuff on it. And I'm going through this, and he goes, this is exactly what we need. Some sort of vision to look into the future. He and I hit it off. That was 3 years ago. He was one of 4 people running in the Republican primary. He's never run before. He's running against a former Speaker of the House, a current statewide office holder as Lieutenant Governor, and a guy who ran for U.S. Senate. The closest any of those veterans came to touching him was 10 points off in August. He ran against our fellow alum, Chris Koster, good friend of mine from Class 82, and won by 5 points. The guy is nothing less than a special person. and he's got incredible intelligence, incredible drive. He's not going to get hung up on typical political hurdles. He wants to do what's right. I was lucky enough to be with him and Vice President Pence yesterday at FABIC. I think the state is ready to catapult ahead. We've already seen those numbers that I flashed up earlier kind of bump up, not because of Greitens, not because of just trends. We're going to keep looking at the 10-year snapshot, but when you look at the excitement that was around that candidacy and the excitement that's around Jeff City, again, my 21st session, and they're getting after it this year like I've never seen. There is a new energy that's associated with it that kind of excites somebody who's been around this a little bit. So I think the future is really bright. We're very hopeful. I wanted to mention just a little something about the alumni. John Sondag, who asked me to come and talk to you tonight, is our chair of the board from AT&T, President of AT&T Missouri. He's been extremely active with our organization. It's been great to have him so involved. I mentioned Chris, great friend of mine, was Attorney General, came that close to being governor. He's doing great. He's landed at Centene, class 82. Tim Jones, former Speaker of the House, class of 86, I believe. And his treasurer was Pat Meehan, who's on his way probably, class 86. And then Senator John Lamping. So you've seen products of this institution figure into the picture in the state of Missouri. And wherever you go and you talk about being from St. Louis U High, it immediately identifies you as something a cut above. And I couldn't be more proud of having been through this institution and couldn't be more grateful to have the opportunity to talk to you tonight. I'd be happy to try to take any questions or comments that you might have, but thank you so much for the opportunity. Okay, so the question was about the proposed soccer stadium downtown here that, as you all know, the governor didn't look too fondly on. But there's a couple things that come into play here. Do we want to use taxpayer money to fund that? That's an underlying question. There's a lot of people that say they don't want to do that. The governor is of that opinion, and I can tell you when and they were looking at taking over the reins of state government, they thought they were $200 million short out of the roughly $8+ billion of discretionary spending they have. I thought that number was light. I thought that wasn't right. I thought it would double. They ended up being $750 million short. And so it's been well documented about the budget cuts that then occurred. University of Missouri, all the departments had a 9% haircut across the board. You had everybody got hit on this. So if you're talking about putting tax credits in and establishing a state obligation for that, it is not good timing for that. I will tell you that it might not be so within 10 miles of where we're sitting, but you take this statewide, it's a no-brainer politically. So I can't see the governor coming around on that. So I think it's an uphill battle. I know that the Board of Aldermen, I believe, took some action in a positive way for that. And I hope it happens. We're not going to get a football team back. And it makes all the sense in the world to have St. Louis to have a soccer team. It's just whether the timing is horrible to go and look for public support for that. Question was why state revenue is down. There might have been some money worth or so spent out of the rainy day fund for other purposes by the previous administration that we have to pay back by June 30th. And that is a huge hit. That's something they didn't contemplate in the budget. And that's a big cause of the problem. That's not getting a lot of ink at all, or no ink. My opinion, our opinion is we don't have a big enough pie. So if we grew the pie and had more economic activity, like those first few data points I hit on, it would be a different picture. But it's a long-term problem. And I think with this administration and this legislative leadership, especially with the appropriations chair, Scott Fitzpatrick, in the House, you're going to see much more agreement on, all right, where's reality? Because sometimes the administration says we expect this much growth, the legislature says this much, and they never get together on the budget in a sensible way. So I think we got to grow the overall economy, and I think just ratchet down on the budget. So the revenue picture is not good, but it's actually improving a little bit with recent months. If I could paraphrase the question so people can hear it, what do you do about the workforce issue when the education system is having to do a lot more about the emotional well-being of a child or the societal issues that face families and kids, especially in the marginal areas? Big problem. Missouri Chamber can't solve that problem. Legislature can't really solve that problem. But where we can, you need to try to connect with the parents and the counselors. And in a lot of ways, in the areas you're describing, that single mom who's trying to hold down 2 jobs, and is that kid getting breakfast in the morning? Are they walking into school ready to learn? Can they learn? These are problems we face all around the country. And St. Louis City is in Kansas City, Haytime, Missouri, same thing. For that. But what needs to be made prevalent is there are opportunities out there that with a 2-year training program or less, if you have applied yourself from K through 12, you'll be ready or close to it for potentially a $60,000 a year job. But there's so many disincentives from taking that when you might fall off public assistance. And so there's this give and take that's there that I think the whole country's wrestling with. But the whole workforce issue, if we could have a better connection, one thing, and I'll stop. There's this program called the Dream It, Do It program, where we launched it in Troy, Missouri. And it's something like this. It's organically developing in communities around the state. But employers are the ones that are saying, I need workers that can do this job. I can't find them. I'm going to reach down into the school districts and say, come look at what I have. So the Troy Toyota stamping plant, Bodine Aluminum, brings these kids from the districts around the community, the Couple County area, and they show them what advanced manufacturing is. And these kids have this aha moment and say, there's a future for me. And we see that developing organically in North Kansas City. It works so well there, Springfield copied it. Why can't we take something like that as a state? And we're not big spenders at the Missouri Chamber, but this is something that's proven to work. And things like this have helped in Georgia, North Carolina, Indiana, Tennessee, and have that be a state program. So that skills gap that they call it, you can just tighten it up. You tighten it up a little bit, it's a game changer. And then you save a few people ultimately. And that's what we're trying to do. And then with trying to get that through this year, and then to find out that the state's $750 million off on their budget, not going to happen right now. But there's ideas out there that can turn that a little bit that we're trying to figure out and trying to implement. But it's the big question out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan, for agreeing to come and speak with us tonight and talk about the state of the economy in Missouri. Just on a personal note, two things that really struck home to me is the brain drain issue. I have two adult kids who have lived what I view as an ideal life, sort of raised, right? They live in Webster Groves, they live in Erickson Slough, and they have this great, and they both, one lives in San Francisco and one lives in Portland, and I've got a sophomore in Erickson. Hopefully she'll stay home so there's somebody to take care of us, but doubtful, however. And then the other thing, we talked about it before. Personally, I worked for a huge company based in St. Louis that moved, which shall go unnamed, that moved to San Antonio in 1992. And it hurts when you lose a headquarters company like that. Maybe it was inevitable, maybe not. It hurts me personally, right, for a job, and it hurts the community when you think about all the United Way money and all the resources and the brains that move. So the facts, and I know you'd like to focus on the facts are really insightful to me, and I think cause us all to stop and think about where our state needs to go for our youth, really. Okay, so next item on the agenda is President Dave Laughlin, who will give us an update on what's new at SLU. But before Dave begins, I want to briefly mention that for those of you who use Twitter or have even heard of what Twitter is, if you don't do so already, you really should follow Dave's Twitter feed, and it is at SLU President, right? I know you love coming every quarter or every few months and hearing Dave give us an update, but you get that on a daily basis on Twitter, and they're really some great tweets. And I took the liberty of putting two up there from the last 24 hours. You probably don't recognize the guy on the right. That's Dave Laughlin dressed up as St. Ignatius. And that was, what were they, shooting water balloons at you or something? Yeah, slingshot. With a slingshot. And I asked Dave this evening, well, how would that happen? I don't ever see Father Weiss doing this when he was our president. He goes, well, they asked. So, and then this is another one he posted of, it's Mission Week, right? Or it was? It is. It is Mission Week. And just some kids, doing what kids do, beating a car up with sledgehammers. And I thought it was a great tweet. It's like Mission Week, boys swinging hammers, large crowds cheering. Oh, and by the way, our ACT average is still 30. This is a great place, AMDG. So this is the kind of thing you get from Dave, in a good way, on Twitter. So if you don't follow him on Twitter, and if you have access to Twitter, you know what it is, or it's a great feed. So without further ado, Dave.
Thank you, Tony. I want to thank Dan for coming tonight. That previous picture. So Father Houlihan came to me, some of you know Father Houlihan, and said, would you dress up as St. Ignatius? It's Mission Week. If the boys pay $1, can they launch a water balloon at you? Nobody tells Father Houlihan no. I'm like, oh, sure, Father. Now, I imagined like soft, floating, high arcing, try to hit me in the right knee. Let's do the cannonball thing. The boys were more like this on the slingshot. They were more like straight back, and they were flying in. I had a Bible in my hand. I actually stopped a couple with a Bible. That'll probably come up at the pearly gates. So I want to thank Dan for coming. I want to make one comment as I was listening to you and I was thinking about this high school. You guys have heard about a project we do called the Clavius Project, and you mentioned Rankin Technical College. Clavius is a project that in the field house right back here in January had 250 kids, about 25 schools. They're going to be in 30 schools and 500 middle school kids. They're teaching coding and basic robotics engineering. And it's an odd partnership, right? St. Louis U High and Rankin Technical College, because not a lot of our kids are going there. We've been supported by the Burgess Family Foundation, Wells Fargo Advisors, a number of private philanthropists. And what our kids are doing for 500 middle schoolers in the city is intellectual community service to this very concern in the state. And Jesuit education is supposed to serve the community in which it resides. So our kids go out, and some of them go out 3 and 4 days a week, as I've said to this group before, to underserved middle schools, and they teach them, and they don't just teach the students, they teach the teachers. How do you do this? I wrote a recommendation for one of those seniors this year to a university for a scholarship that they made the mistake not to give him. But it dawned on me on reflecting on it that since they started only 2.5 years ago, in foundation money, in corporate money, and in private money, that these boys in our school had encouraged $1 million worth of investment in this project. It's amazing stuff, and I like to always say St. Louis U High, for all the goodness we have in our state or our city, where there's concerns, we're part of the solution, and I'm really proud of that. I prayed for Father Bob Costello. Many of you know Gary Kornfeld, who finished 29 years as our head football coach. He's been here a long time before that. Please keep him and his family in your prayers. His brother Dan passed away today. Dan, if you saw him at football games, is a brother that's in a wheelchair on the sidelines. Some of you may know Dan, a wonderful guy. I just got that message late this afternoon, and Gary had been asking us to pray for him here just in the last couple of days. So I don't have more information, but please keep him in your prayers. For frenzy, I just want to follow up on John Panelia's comment. If you're in the classes of 1990 to 2010, did I get those years right, John? We actually have a way of tracking your iPhone to determine whether or not you've contributed. And so if you haven't, just a reminder, midnight tonight is the cutoff. That was a joke. Let me interrupt for a minute. I want to spend 2 minutes and talk about me, which I don't necessarily want to spend a lot of time about. You all likely have seen, and so this is a little bit selfish too, the announcement that at the end of June 2018, I will be leaving and finishing after 13 years at St. Louis U High. I say that first of all because I recognize in the information world that's so immediate, most people didn't read the full announcement, and so they're like, it's been good having you, good luck after June. And I said, well, I'm going to be around a little longer than that. And so what I said to our faculty, I would say to you, and that is, I'm an Irish Catholic. We pretend when the things are difficult that it's just not real. And then we don't talk about it. So maybe a year from now, I'll be happy to talk to you about it. But what I would say to you is there's a whole lot of work that I'm engaged in and that we're doing at the high school. It's the honor of my life to be here. I don't think there are any skeletons or concerns or problems. I've shared with many people that in 2014, my father passed away. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska. I was at Rockhurst High School before I came here, or as I call it right now, the evil empire on the western side of the state. And my mom has been on her own since then, and I've done my best to take care of her, but it's an opportunity among many other considerations for me to be closer to her. So I'm happy to talk about that with you individually. Perhaps the most important thing is I'm still going to be around for a little while, so we can do this a year from now and maybe have a different conversation. Our school update. I love Joe Schulte, and he built such a legacy here, but one of the people that he brought into his department was Catherine Whitaker, and she has run our theater program for a number of years as Joe's understudy and now directing it. And we ran a musical. Did anybody go see Mary Poppins? It was the most incredible show. I don't like to use comparatives, and so I won't. I have said to many people, I've been traveling, I've been visiting with people. I finished the play with tears rolling down both of my cheeks, and if you just missed it, I'm Irish Catholic. We pretend these things aren't happening. And the stage, the set, the lights, the sound, the choreography, the music, the tap dance, the acting, the singing, absolutely, you won't see a finer production. It was outstanding. What's going on at SLU High? Well, right now our parents, Mothers Club led and Fathers Club joining in, has Father Dave McConey in our chapel, beginning a Lenten speaker series. If you look at that on Tony's example on Twitter, you're all welcome to come. If you're not a SLU mom and you're not a SLU parent, that's okay. Feel free to come to the spirituality series. We've got this all-star lineup of Jesuits talking about Ignatian spirituality, especially as we head into Lent. What else is going on? Well, right now as we talk, our hockey team is playing Oakville. This picture, you see that Tigers? I'm pretty sure that the car they painted, that they then smashed with a sledgehammer, had something to do with the hockey game tonight. I'm not entirely sure. Hockey team's the #1 seed right now. It's being broadcast on the SLU Sports Network. I'm told when I'm finished that maybe they can pull that up if you want to see it. We're hoping to win the Challenge Cup this year. The basketball team, you probably have seen or heard for the first time in the history of the Metro Catholic Conference, won our conference championship outright, and we head into a very tough district and playoff scenario that includes both Webster Groves and Chaminade, teams that we've both beaten and lost to this year, but I'm really proud of what's going on with our kids in basketball. We welcomed on Tuesday night in this room the class of 2021 from almost 100 schools and 68 zip codes, a class of approximately 250 boys whose average high school or grade school GPA is a 3.77. It's a bright group of young men like the rest of our junior bills. I don't want to stand and talk to any one of them for too long because they'll figure out that they're smarter than I am, but we're really excited about welcoming them. We have 12 National Merit finalists this year. We've just had kids who have returned from trips from the Silicon Valley where they met with our alums to talk about advances in the tech industry. We had a group that went with our social studies to Washington, D.C. They met with our alums who are engaged in all sorts of governmental, elected officials and other organizations. We had a trip that went to California with other Jesuit schools, a justice summit called Arupe West. Our ACES group, which is a lot of our students who are African-American, did what's called a Philia retreat. So they just made their retreat. We sent about 40 kids to Washington, D.C. for the March for Life. So when you think about education at St. Louis U High, so much of it is happening outside of St. Louis U High. It's tremendous. We lost Father Bob Costello this week. I think many people who knew him have their own anecdotes. I just want to share two. I got some lovely emails back from people. One was this wonderful memory of Father Costello teaching Latin and every day bringing in the Peanuts cartoon strip and having them translate it to Latin. Really an amazing thing. The other one was a memory of Father Costello's that somebody sent me this afternoon saying he hoped he could be here tonight. He didn't know if he'd make it, and I haven't seen him yet, so forgive me if you're here. He remembered Father Costello saying, "My proudest moment as president was when I conferred 2 diplomas to 2 alums, one after the other. One was the son of a very successful St. Louis business person, followed by the son of a cab driver." And that more than anything captured the spirit of this place and how we pull the St. Louis community together in the best way we know how. So let's keep Father Costello in gratitude for his life and his service as a Jesuit, not just here, but a lot of places in our prayers. I want to share with you, I could pick out all sorts of reflections. I know I'm being quick because I want to introduce our new principal too and give him an opportunity to introduce himself to you. We had this wonderful affair some of you were at in this room a couple of weeks ago. We're working, as you know, to raise money for various aspects of the school. That's all going well, although, you know, if anybody wants to see me afterwards, I'm available. But we had a chapter that we're looking at to grow the spiritual aspect of the school, both in the establishment of some new campus ministry offices and renovating and really restoring that original chapel, as well as working to add a number of programs to build upon the great work that our campus ministry team does. Simply put, that team said to a number of boys, will you please come tell people who might be interested in this aspect of improving SLU, sacraments, liturgy, community service, retreats. Tell them what the school's meant to you. I sat there, and I'm pretty sure I know this for a fact. I think those people in our office invited those kids, and those kids wrote their reflections, and not a lot of us needed to do much to edit their paper. I sat there again with tears coming out, wishing I sat closer to a Kleenex box, listening to these boys talk about the formation they had received here as they're reflecting in their senior year. And I just want to share a few of those with you. Throughout my career at SLU, this is a senior, I've been fortunate enough to engage in many discussions and participate in many events surrounding social justice. I think it's fairly particularly easy for a high school student to trod through life unaware of many issues that people face, not only in St. Louis, but around the world. The very idea of social justice seemed like such a broad concept. Actively upholding the truth is deserving of dignity. If one makes a conscious effort to promote the truth, then they are promoting justice in my eyes, and I think that is something that our club, Pax Christi, does a great job of through deep and thought-provoking discussion. Engaging in conversations about the sacredness of human life in many different contexts is upholding that truth. And when I work in our community service program, it is a good example of that discussion in action. I love this reflection from a boy who's part of our liturgical choir. So you say, what can the arts do for the formation of a soul? Thank you for being here today. This space right here is one of the greatest and most diversely used spaces at St. Louis U High. That's our campus ministry office. I am here twice a week for meetings. About a week after the bell rang my freshman year, at the end of second period, to begin activity period, I heard an announcement over the intercom that said, liturgical music will be rehearsing for Mass of the Holy Spirit in the chapel. Freshmen, you are welcome. I had nothing going on during activity period, and I asked myself, should I go? Although my quiet side put up a fight, I mustered up the courage to go. And upon entering the chapel, I was instantly met with welcome and kindness by upperclassmen members who were happy I was there. The rehearsal itself was run by two of our seniors. The entire group rehearsed like a well-oiled machine, and even though it was my first rehearsal, I felt proud to be part of such a special group. Now listen to this. Most importantly, being part of liturgical music has benefited my own faith and my own relationship with God. A religious I know often said that singing is praying twice. Liturgical music program at SLU has shown me the wholehearted truth of this statement. Through this program, I have developed a joyful and strong relationship with God. I don't know where I would be along my faith journey if I had not attended that first rehearsal freshman year. I do know that the opportunity for prayer and thanks through music that I have been given since then has forever made me a better, more loving person. And lastly, before I introduce our new principal, so bear with me because these are awesome reflections and I'm trying to be timely. He didn't identify, I thought it was remarkable. In his reflection, he did not identify that he was our student body president, which shows great humility. But he said this, and like some of the speakers you have heard or will hear today, I'm fairly involved with campus ministry. Before I came to SLU, I told myself that a public, active faith life did not have to and most likely would not be a part of my life at SLU. I was very wrong. My outlook began to change at the end of my freshman year. At the prodding of my friends and the promise of pizza, notice the honesty, I joined the freshman pastoral team. The assumption I made prior to my freshman year to stay out of all things campus ministry slowly changed as I found that working within this department brought me new strength and a new faith life. I have had incredible experiences going to outings at McCormick House as a freshman or working in my senior service project at the United Cerebral Palsy Heartland for my senior project. I am growing exponentially. I have been blessed to be a participant on the freshman and sophomore retreat teams and lead Kairos Retreat. Overall, being involved with campus ministry has given a lot of meaning to my time at SLU. I have met a lot of great new people here and found a passion for servant leadership. As such, I have come to realize that two of SLU's main philosophies, living as men for others and conducting ourselves with the knowledge that all we think, say, and do is given to God, have become a reality for me through the work I have done. These are the type of young men that our staff are forming, and I'm so proud to just share their raw insights of their own formation with you. I am very pleased to introduce to you our next guest, who will visit with you and at least take the time to introduce himself to you. Father Ian Gibbons will be the 20th principal at St. Louis University High School. Father Gibbons, I think for some of you who will recall, is the first Jesuit principal in 34 years. But his experience as an educator and in administration is pretty tremendous. Father Gibbons is joining us following his current role as the academic assistant principal at Regis High School in New York City. And what I told our incoming freshman families is there's this survey that gets published where we were rated as the 10th best Catholic high school in the country this last year. Father Gibbons is coming from the first best Catholic high school in the country. And I'll say it because no pressure, Father, no pressure. But Father Gibbons is a native of the St. Louis metropolitan area, a 22-year Jesuit of our province, the United States Central and Southern Province of the Society of Jesus. He holds 2 degrees from Southern Illinois University, an undergraduate economics degree, as well as a master's degree in business administration. He has earned master's degrees in American Studies from St. Louis University, a master's degree in divinity from the Western Jesuit School of Theology at Boston College, a master's degree in the Catholic School Leadership from the Institute for Catholic School Leadership from the Jesuit University of San Francisco, a Jesuit with multiple master's degrees. I know that'll shock you all. Prior to his current service at Regis in New York City, Father Gibbons' ministry includes teaching economics at Regis Jesuit High School in Denver, Colorado, director of campus ministry at Rockhurst High School, someplace over there, and the assistant to the president of Strake Jesuit High School in Houston, Texas. I am very confident, as is our community that was involved in his selection, that Father Gibbons' academic, educational, administrative, pastoral experience, and his spiritual depth make him uniquely qualified to be the next principal at St. Louis U High. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Father Ian Gibbons.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be back in St. Louis. It's wonderful to be invited into such a tremendous school as St. Louis University High School. One of my great mentors, one of my great friends, the principal of Rockhurst High School, has described me as a high school Jesuit, the distinction being someone who's fully and deeply committed apostolically, professionally to the high school ministry. And that is certainly true, but it wasn't always the case. In fact, I was absolutely convinced that I was going to go into through the academic route in my field of economics. The thing that changed that was experience, and that's such a pivotal thing for Jesuits and Ignatian spirituality, to have that experience and to reflect upon it. My Regency assignment, where I was assigned to work between my philosophy and theology studies, was in Denver, Colorado. And I figured I would put in my 3 years there. It would be a great experience, a lot of fun. I'd go on for my theology studies and then on to economic studies and a great career in the academy. I found myself absolutely loving the experience, and it deeply touched me in ways that I couldn't set down. I couldn't quite put away. And in my time in Cambridge, Massachusetts, doing my seminary studies, the idea of coming back to high school was foundational to me. And by the time I'd finished those studies, I was asking to indeed do that. Every assignment I've had has been challenging. It has been a great growth experience, and it has definitely formed me and showed me the importance of this time period. These 4 years are so important for who we are to become in God's eyes and in the world's eyes. The Jesuits often joke that teenagers, and especially teenage boys, are basically Jesus in his least recognizable form. But indeed, they are deeply pliable in so many ways. And I've had the experience of helping to open the first Jesuit all-girls school in the world. I've had the experience of working for a great school that has a tremendous balance of academics and co-curriculars, a STEM-based school in Houston, Texas, the only Catholic scholarship school in the country on the Upper East Side of New York City. Each one of these experiences has been a gift from God. Each one has been an incredible point of moving forward into something greater and better. And at each stage, God has opened those doors to me to something that's been truly an incredible experience. So it is my great honor, my great privilege to be a part of SLU High as we go into our third century. Thank you for the welcome tonight. I look forward to meeting each and all of you, and looking great forward to all the tremendous work we have yet to do. Thank you.
I'll get this picture down of you from your tweet here. Thank you, Father Gibbons. It's good to see as we lose one Irish Catholic, we're getting another one back in the trade, but sorry, dude. And I would also, Mary Poppins, that was an unbelievable show. It was just, I know we've all just done good work here in the theater, but it was just a wow show. Unfortunately, it's over, so you can't see it if you didn't. Upcoming events. March 25th, Go Forth campaign event for counseling. And often, I don't know is that what you were just talking about with the students writing? Somebody help me out.
That was a spirituality event. This is more to look at our counseling program, and I'd say if you'd like more information about that, see myself or Melissa Jones, John Cornelia. Happy to give you information about that.
Thank you very much. April 8th, the biggie, we've already talked about that, 6 weeks away, roughly, Cashba. Hope to see everybody there. April 22nd, the Michael Palumbo Memorial Golf Tournament at Forest Park. May 17th is our next meeting, our next dinner meeting. June 22nd, Attorney CLE offered its SLU. I didn't know we were in that business now, but I'll probably be there for that. Chance for lawyers in the group, and not just in this group, right? Oh, sorry, do I need to? Oh, you're right, sorry. 8 hours of Missouri Bar CLE for lawyers, thanks to Jim Hacking, class of '88. And the Father Hagen Alumni Cup Golf Tournament. We revamped that last year. It was a tremendous success, I believe, Joe, right? Sold out last year. We lowered the price, had a great day at Forest Park. To Friday afternoon at a great golf course. Hope you can join us for that. Anything else for the cause? Anybody know what the score of the hockey game is?
Let me look on Twitter.
Twitter. I don't have my Twitter with me. I think that's it. Okay. Anything? Anybody want to raise anything? Bar is still open. The hockey game will be on momentarily. Waiting for the 4-0 SLU, the hockey game. Okay. Thanks, everybody. And thank you for being patient with me.
We can catch the end.
Yes.